This is the Hyundai Venue, a small SUV with a small price tag. But is it the right little cheapie for you? Stay tuned and you'll find out. G'day, I'm Matt. This channel is called The Right Car, where I help you find the right car for your needs. Is this going to be it? Well, that's going to depend on what you expect of your small SUV in 2023. Just like most other compact SUVs, the prices have gone up for the 2023 Hyundai Venue range. This one here is the top spec version, and it justifies its cost increases with some extra gear, including some good safety tech. I'll tell you more about it as we go along. Thanks for watching. I hope you're enjoying what you're seeing so far. Please do hit like and subscribe if you are, and also please share this channel if you are enjoying what you're seeing. I'm enjoying it. As I already mentioned, the Hyundai Venue is a cheap little SUV, and it's Hyundai's most affordable high-riding model. The entry-level version, which is just called Venue, starts at less than $22,000 for the manual version. Yes, I said manual, and there's an auto version if you want it for an extra $2,000. Look, the base model doesn't come overly well equipped, but it does come with 15-inch alloy wheels and an 8-inch touchscreen with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, plus new digital instrumentation as well. Above it is the active model, which stands out a little bit more because it's got 17-inch alloy wheels. It also gets LED daytime running lights, and it does have, well, a little bit more going for it in terms of standard equipment. And then there's this one here, which is the Elite. It's the top spec model, and it does also get 17-inch alloy wheels, LED daytime running lights, still with halogen headlights though, which is a bit of a disappointment. As standard, you also get a sunroof. There's an 8-inch touchscreen media system. This time it gets sat-nav, and it has wired Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. The other models have wireless because they don't have sat-nav. And then there's also a wireless phone charger. You get 2 USB-C ports in the back seat of the top spec model as well, plus climate control, air conditioning. It's only single zone, but at least it's something. And it certainly feels like you're getting your money's worth when you're spending the extra to buy the top spec model. You also get some extra safety equipment, which the other models miss out on. And this thing needs as much safety help as it can get. I'll tell you more soon. If you're looking to buy a very small, very affordable SUV, then the Hyundai Venue stands out for plenty of reasons, but there are some alternatives that I think you should be checking out, including one that's also from Korea, the Kia Stonic. And it offers the choice of some very affordable versions, but also a turbocharged top spec model, which actually is a bit of fun to drive. Might not be the most livable transmission, but I reckon that top spec turbo could be the right car for a bunch of people for a bunch of different reasons. It's a bit bigger than this car too. And then there's also the Volkswagen T-Cross, which I rate. I reckon it's one of the best little SUVs that you can buy. It's got a turbocharged engine, but it's also got a clever sliding second row seat, so you can maximize passenger capacity or whatever you need to put in the boot. It's a very clever little SUV. You might be wondering why I'm not mentioning the likes of the Chery Omoda 5. Hit the link at the top of the screen there, and you'll probably see, if you watch my review, why I'm not recommending that $30,000-ish small SUV as the best alternative. Likewise, hit the link there and you'll be able to see my Haval Jolion review. I don't think it's the best alternative for this sort of money either. But there is one Chinese car that I think you should be looking at if you're looking at a Hyundai Venue, and that is the MG ZS T. Now, the T is the important part. It gives you the turbo engine, gives you all the safety stuff that you should be getting, and it's still very, very affordable. It's not the greatest car to drive, but you know, if you're buying a car like this, you probably don't really care that much how it drives. But there is some stuff to talk about when it comes to how this one drives. We'll get to it. The Hyundai Venue is very small. It's just over 4 meters long, which makes it a fair bit smaller than most of the rivals I mentioned in that last section. So it's going to be perfect for you if you live in an urban area or you have a small garage, because it's going to be easy to park. It's tiny. But what isn't tiny is the boot. Let me show you. Not many other little cars this size have a boot this big. Look, it doesn't look this big when the floor is at this height, but you can lower the boot floor and put it down so it's right down low, and that gives you 355 litres of cargo capacity, which is heaps. You'll be able to fit a pram and some bags in there if you've got kids, or if you're a couple, you'll be able to fit easily a week's worth of luggage in the back. And underneath the boot floor, there's also a space saver spare wheel, so that's a nice thing to have. There's some little tie down hooks as well, so if you get one of those cargo nets, you can actually hold things in place nicely too. The interior of this top spec Venue certainly feels a bit more special than the entry-level versions. I really like the color-coded white highlights in here that just lift the ambience a little bit. What I don't love as much is that there's been a switch to a different material on the seats. The existing version in the top spec grade had these denim style seats, which looked really good. There was also a two-tone interior, but it seems that some of the, I guess, expensive elements have been removed from this car. There are some little cheap things that I don't love quite as much. There's like these little mats in here, which looks like it's been bought off Wish or Alibaba. It fits in there nicely in that little shelf in front of the passenger, but it just looks a bit naff, I reckon. Now, there's other things in here that are promising and very good. So you've got quite a bit of storage. That little shelf, you've got this wireless phone charger in front of the gear selector. You've got a couple of cup holders. They are quite small. There's a covered armrest, again, with a thing in it, which doesn't fit. It's just in there. So that's not great. You've got bottle holders in the doors, and they're actually a little bit bigger than a bottle, so you can fit some extra stuff in there too. You've got a glove box, as you would expect. Look, it's not the most engaging or the most amazing cabin, but it does feel pretty good for the price. You've got this 8-inch touchscreen media system. It's pretty easy to get your head around. There are some things in here which you might find interesting or silly. Up to you, depending what your preferences are. You've got sat-nav, obviously, but there's also this stuff called sounds of nature. So you can basically put ambient noise on in the background. There's also a quiet mode, so you can make it so that anyone in the back, if they're sleeping or whatever, you can make it so that the front speakers are the only ones that work. Now, speaking of speakers, you get 6 in the top 2 grades and 4 in the base model one. So the sound system isn't necessarily amazing, but it does the job. Instead of a cluster of dials, you've got these little screens here. So you've got your revs on one side, you've got your speedo on the other, and there's a little trip computer on the inside too. Let's check out the back seat. Backseat space in the Hyundai Venue is very good. For a car of this size, I'm surprised that I can fit behind my own driving position. I'm 182 centimeters or 6 foot tall, and I've got enough knee room. I've got heaps of foot room and enough headroom as well, even with the sunroof in this grade eating into a little bit of that space. It's not too hard to get in and out either. It's got a fairly generous aperture for the door, so that's pretty nice. Can you hear that? That's the sounds of nature playing the forest sounds in the background. Nice little chirpy birds. Now, there are no rear seat air vents in here, but if you do have kids, they will be pretty well accommodated with ISOFIX points in the window seats and 3 top tether points as well. There's just one mat pocket. It's a mesh one, so things might fall through it, but there are hard kick plates on the seat backs. There's also 2 USB-C ports, as I mentioned, in this grade only. The other models don't get those rear seat charging ports. So this one does sort of stand out as the one to choose if you are going to use the back seat the most. There's no center fold down armrest, no cup holders, but there are bottle holders in the doors. So it isn't necessarily the best and most accommodating back seat, but it does have a fair bit of space. You could fit 2 adults back here, 2 kids should be fine too. So yeah, pretty impressive for a little SUV. There's only one engine option across the entire Hyundai Venue model range, and it's a 1.6 litre non-turbocharged 4-cylinder petrol engine. You'll see the outputs on your screen now, and no, they aren't huge. The entry-level model, as I said, comes with the option of a 6-speed manual or 6-speed automatic, but if you choose the Active or Elite, you have to have the 6-speed auto, and I've got some issues with it. I'll tell you more in the driving section. All models are front-wheel drive. There's no turbocharged version, no hybrid version, so it might not be right for you, but it does get the job done in most situations. There's a bit to talk about when it comes to the drive experience of the Hyundai Venue because it's not perfect, not by any stretch of the imagination, but it's also not as frustrating as some of those other very affordable SUVs that I've already mentioned in terms of the drive experience. A lot of that comes down to the fact that it does have a more traditional non-turbocharged engine and a pretty standard 6-speed automatic transmission. And at urban speeds, like I'm driving right now, that sort of combination works pretty well. It's pretty punchy to get away from a standstill, the shifts are relatively smooth, and the engine isn't too coarse because you're not asking all that much of it. It's when you get up to higher speeds and onto the highway or the freeway that this engine and transmission really starts to show how annoying it can be. And a lot of that comes down to the fact that it will hunt between 4th, 5th and 6th gear just to maintain momentum at freeway speeds. There we go. So that's what it'll do if it thinks that it needs just to get a little bit more grunt than it's got going at that point in time. So it's 6-speed auto, but it's obviously dropping back from 6th to 5th to 4th and back up, back down, back up. It's just unsettling. It's just really annoying, in fact. If you are the sort of person who sits at the speed limit, yeah, it might be a bit of a deal breaker. There's some other interesting elements to this drive experience too. So when you're at lower speeds, I think that the steering is actually okay until you start to do something like a 3-point turn on a tight street. So let me just indicate to go around here. Now, into reverse and put the opposite lock on, and the steering's really, really heavy. It doesn't need to be that heavy, and it actually makes it harder work than it needs to be in that sort of situation. If you are the sort of person who lives in a very, I guess, busy area where there's lots of 3-point turns required or there's not many through roads, that might be really annoying for you. I mentioned in the interior section that there's the lane keeping assist function, which you might want to disable by holding the OK button, then hitting a button on the screen to turn it off. Thankfully, it's not too overbearing, but it is something that annoys me, and I try and turn it off every time I'm going on the highway. So how about ride comfort? Look, for an urban city dweller, it's going to be fine. I think that the ride is actually pretty good. You do feel a lot of what's going on the road surface. It's not necessarily the last word in refinement, but then again, it shouldn't be at this price either. And look, it is pretty comfortable in almost all situations that I've experienced it in. Sure, you might find that if it hits a really sharp edge, you can be jolted around in the cabin a little bit, but honestly, most little SUVs will do that because they've got a short wheelbase. So there's not much of a gap to disperse that sort of bumpiness through the body of the car. So yeah, you just got to deal with it a little bit if you're buying something this little. Let's talk efficiency. This is a little car with a relatively little fuel consumption figure. The official combined number for the manual version is 7 litres per 100 kilometres. And if you choose an auto like this one, well, it's 7.2 litres per 100 Ks on the combined cycle. So that's what you should be able to achieve across a mix of driving. And if you're wondering what I've seen, it's on your screen now, and that was across a mix of driving too. I wasn't too unimpressed with that. Certainly better than some of those other small SUVs I've tested recently. The Hyundai Venue isn't a safety superstar. It managed a 4-star rating back in 2019, and things have only gotten stricter since then, so it's not necessarily the safest car that you can buy at this sort of price point. It still has some of the stuff you would expect, including autonomous emergency braking with pedestrian detection. It doesn't have cyclist or junction detection though. It does have a lane keeping assistance system, but you have to choose the top spec elite model if you want blind spot monitoring and rear cross traffic alert. I just wish brands like Hyundai would show a bit of respect to their customers and just include that stuff as standard and maybe bump the prices up just a little bit. It surely wouldn't cost that much to add it to the lower grade versions. There's other stuff as well. It's got auto high beam lights, and it's also got a system which will warn you if the car in front of you has driven away. So if you're distracted by your surroundings, that's a nice thing to have. Plus there's 6 airbags, dual front side and full length curtain coverage too. Hyundai offers a 5-year unlimited kilometre warranty, which is what most brands offer these days. There's also a cap price servicing plan for the life of the car, or if you choose, you can prepay your servicing for 3, 4 or 5 years. If you choose to prepay, there's no discount or anything, and the average service cost you'll see on your screen now is actually pretty affordable for this sort of car, and I reckon it's one of the reasons that it would make sense for a lot of customers out there. Plus, if you do service your car with Hyundai, you will get roadside assistance for life. That's pretty impressive. The Hyundai Venue isn't going to be for everyone. I know that the 4-star safety rating and that annoying transmission at higher speeds could be a deal breaker for some people, but I still think it'd be a more livable car than some of those other cheap Chinese-made SUVs in this sort of price range. But tell me what you think in the comments section below. Would you have this, one of those, or something completely different? I'd love to know your thoughts. And if you haven't already, please do hit like and subscribe. It helps a lot. See you in the next one.